Hi, my name is Jacqueline Kuo. I'm a solutions engineer here at Dataiku, and I'm very happy to welcome you to my product day session. We are going to talk about accelerating data prep with AI assistance and automation. Now, this is a topic that's near and dear to probably all of our hearts because data prep takes the longest time in a project lifecycle, and it's the most important, right? It's the foundation to ensuring that your data quality is good for modeling, for any kind of predictive analytics, and then eventually any kind of insights you're going to bring to the business. The good thing is that Dataiku provides a workbench that allows you to do every part of the analytics cycle, including the initial pieces of data ingestion and data preparation, which is what we're going to focus on today. Specifically, we're going to talk through how you can leverage Gen AI as just another tool in your toolkit for data prep specifically, and how Dataiku helps with that. Also, we're going to talk through how to rerun projects automatically by scheduling them once you have that pipeline built so that you can reuse as opposed to having to go and build those pipelines over and over manually. All right, so let's talk about Gen AI because it seems like everybody wants to build a chatbot with Gen AI. We've seen this all over the news. You probably have all worked with ChatGPT today, yesterday, a week ago, a month ago. And so this is kind of all the hype right now. But the thing is, LLMs are not a chatbot. LLMs can the modeling behind ChatGPT and behind Gen AI. It's not specifically a chatbot. In fact, it's actually a model that's trained on many trillions of words. And it is an expert at generating text because it's been trained on so many words created by humans. It's an expert at generating text that sounds like a human. And so there are actually a lot of use cases for LLMs that are outside of chatbots. And I think one of my favorite ones is using LLMs to do some of this data prep that is incredibly important for any analytics project. So I'm going to show you this here in Dataiku. I actually revisited one of my projects from 2 years ago that I had built. It's around a Scooby-Doo use case, and all we're doing is some simple exploratory data analysis. So what I did 2 years ago was I ingested this data. This data set is from Kaggle. It was generated manually by a user on there, and it shows every single Scooby-Doo episode and movie. You can see over here, and it shows the IMDb score, the engagement score. It has a whole bunch of columns on the monsters and like what monsters were part of each of the episodes, who caught the monster and how they were caught. So some really, really interesting and fun data. And so the question I asked of this data 2 years ago was, how do I just find out who is the best detective? And also what groups, maybe like Scooby and Shaggy, do they work the best as a group? What group solve the most mysteries together? So we used a prepare recipe and a group recipe to do the cleaning to finally end up with this data set that we were then able to create some charts around. So you can see here that Fred, Daphne, and Velma were the best trio. The best duo was Scooby and Shaggy, our favorites. And then over here, if we look at just everything overall, it seemed like Fred actually outbeat everyone. He solved the most mysteries on his own. But then right after, we have all 5 of them, the whole mystery gang together, solve the most mysteries together after that. So kind of fun to revisit, some of our memories watching Scooby-Doo. But let's say we wanted to do this data cleaning and build this pipeline now, 2 years later today with the new technology that we have. Let's kind of go through this together. So the first thing I want to show you is the feature called AI Prepare in Dataiku. So these are the steps that I use to do some initial aggregation, including some filtering over here that I did. what if I wanted to use AI Prepare to do this filtering? I'm actually going to turn these off over here. And when I click on AI Prepare, essentially what it allows me to do is generate a prompt and type in a prompt. And then Dataiku is going to generate the steps of the prepare script that are needed to execute that prompt. So in this case, I've already written the prompt, so I'm going to copy it over here. We're going to keep rows where season is 1, 2, 3, or 4, and character involvement is equal to 1. So we really just want to keep the TV series, and we want to keep the rows where one of our mystery gang members solves the mystery. So we can see the result here. It is now keeping the rows where season is 1, 2, 3, or 4, and that character involvement is 1. We can see that some rows have been removed, and we can do a quick check over here as well. We can look at season. It looks like it's only those seasons, and also character involvement is only 1. So that's pretty cool, right? And this is pretty cool too, to just allow you to very quickly come up with those steps. Oftentimes we have, over 100 different processors to help you clean and wrangle your data within a prepare step. What if you're able to just type in a prompt and have Dataiku do the rest for you? So definitely helping with getting to cleaner data faster. Now, what if I'm a coder? Now, I didn't use any code for this, but what if I wanted to make my code, writing code for EDA or for anything, faster in Dataiku? So I'm going to come over here and actually use a predefined template. If you guys haven't used these already, I really like them because they're kind of predefined templates that contain documentation and code already written for you to do a bunch of different kinds of analyses. We're going to create a correlation analysis, and I've already created one over here. So this is what it looks like, right? And it actually automatically kind of generated this because I used that input data set from my flow. So it's got documentation and some code for me. So I can kind of run, I can run a bunch of these here. You'll see that Dataiku's automatically inputted my the data set name in here. So I can read in that data set as a pandas data frame. And then I can run a correlation matrix on this data set. So this is beautiful. It's wonderful. If we didn't have a predefined template, how might we go about writing this code on our own? And how might we do that a little bit faster than maybe Googling and looking up syntax? This is where our AI code assistant comes in. So if we see over here, I'm going to reload this. This is an extension that allows Dataiku users to use our code assistant to ask questions on how to write code, on the actual syntax for writing that code, and then explaining code as well. So let's see this in practice. The first thing I'm going to do is ask our AI assistant to create a correlation matrix for me to analyze the numerical columns, asking it how might I do that? So I can run this, and it's going to show me some code that I might use. And we can see here this correlation function was also what was used before to create that correlation matrix earlier. So we can kind of see, yeah, it looks correct. We can also ask it to write the actual code for us using our inputs in the actual notebook. So in this case, we have our data frame that contains our Scooby-Doo data. And we can say, hey, go ahead and write a correlation matrix for the numerical columns in DF. So I ran this earlier. This was the code that was generated. And if we run this, we'll actually see this is the correlation matrix that's generated for me in a heat map format. And we can see that it's exactly like the one that we saw earlier. But what's kind of cool is that it's actually added some additional information. So it's pulled in the actual values of the correlation between each of the different columns. Now, AI Explain is also pretty awesome because it allows you to understand like what's going on in a piece of code. So you can put this on top of any cell within your notebook, and then Dataiku is going to tell you what is going on in this cell. This is helpful. I could see it being really helpful for when you're learning or trying to understand new code, or working with a colleague. This is going to help you quickly understand what's going on in that code faster. And then, some of those earlier steps is just going to help you be a better coder. In fact, I think it would really expedite my coding speed personally. So you can use this both in a notebook as well as in a Code Studio environment. So if any of you are using VS Code, or you have a favorite IDE, you can spin up an instance of this using Code Studios and Dataiku. And then on the left over here, you have a code assistant. So this is kind of like a chatbot, just like a ChatGPT. And it allows you to ask questions just like you would any chatbot. So I can come in here. Let's say I want to ask, how do I summarize a data frame, just in general. So then it's going to reply with how I might do it. So it tells me, hey, you can do df describe. Cool. What's really awesome about this chatbot is that it has memory of the older questions that you asked. And also it knows what code is written here. So I can, actually I did this earlier, I can highlight this piece of code or any code in my script. I can come down here. I can say, hey, maybe I want to explain this with Code Assistant. So here it's saying, hey, go ahead and explain that piece of code. And then Code Assistant has here told me what one-hot encoding is, and that's a pre-processing set for categorical features. What if I wanted something a little bit more advanced? I can kind of highlight a whole bunch of text over here. I can also do the same thing, right-click, go to Code Assistant. I can even have Code Assistant explain this whole piece of code for me. I can even have it write a unit test for me for this piece of code specifically, which I think is pretty awesome as well, where it kind of returns that exact piece of code that you might need. So, Code Assistant can help you both in the VS Code, in your favorite IDE, as well as in your Jupyter notebooks to expedite your coding. Cool. So we talked about how do we do existing work better, right? So we can use AI Prepare and AI Code Assistant. Now, what if I actually wanted to do more, bring in more analysis into my in my project? This was done 2 years ago. So one thing I thought about was, what if I actually had a description of the different episodes? I actually brought it in over here. So now we have this additional description column. With Dataiku, you have access to a whole slew of recipes that allow you to perform traditional NLP tasks with large language models. So I did this over here with our classification recipe. In this example, I'm using it to classify those descriptions into mystery, adventure, and comedy. So just trying to identify the genre of the episode. What's cool about this is that you notice here, you can actually choose the LLM that you want to use. So we can see here within this instance, I have a whole bunch set up. The idea here is that you can kind of choose which LLM you might want to try and see how each LLM might perform differently for each of these different tasks. So you can kind of exchange these. You can also see the prompt over here that's generated on the back end for this. So it's generating a prompt that's being sent out to that LLM. And then over here, we can actually see the output. And I'm only showing 6 columns here of the 83 so that we can have a better look at the output. So we have the description, the title, and the prediction. So we can actually select this. It looks like most of them are mysteries, with some being adventure and comedy. And I think what I found really interesting about this is, how does an LLM actually interpret the category based off of the description? So comedy, the category, yeah. How does the LLM just decide on the category based on this description? So an LLM is trained on a whole bunch of different text, and it's really good at interpreting text in the context of that sentence or that paragraph. So, for example, this one here, you can see the description. Scooby and Gang visit a culinary resort run by Fred's uncle. They encounter a ghost. The mystery intensifies. It's using the word mystery in here, but it's categorized as a comedy. I think as we're reading it, it does sound kind of funny, right? A gourmet ghost, like that's kind of hilarious. If we go over here, we can actually see why the LLM decided that this was a comedy. And it says that it's describing a story where the characters are solving a mystery while with elements of humor and lightheartedness. And it's been able to capture that feeling based off of this text and the context of it. So it's pretty powerful in the sense that it can really go beyond traditional NLP in the sense that it's able to pick up on the context in which these words are being written. So this is kind of a fun example, but you might be thinking, well, how might I use this use LLMs more in my day-to-day, like kind of more practically? So we can, I've seen this example a lot in a lot of our customers, where you might want to be able to standardize product categories or certain categories across different systems and match them to a master kind of product category list, or it could be any category. So how you might do this without LLMs is you might leverage something like a fuzzy join to do it. So let's say we have this data set that contains a bunch of different product categories. You can see that some are misspelled and misspelled or capitalized or lowercase, kind of different cases in here. And then we have like a master category list over here that we might want to join it with. So I can run a fuzzy join in Dataiku to do this. And we can see over here that some of them were correctly matched, and even was able to catch on to some of the misspelling. So it was able to say, oh, this looks like clothing, so I'm going to match it with that master clothing column or category, fashion and fashion, even though it's lowercase. But it wasn't able to capture everything. So, for example, over here, musical instruments and jewelry, these categories don't exist in the master category, neither does footwear. So I wanted to try running this with an LLM, right? An LLM is able to capture the context and kind of group words that it understands as similar. So over here, we can use that same exact recipe to indicate the classes that I want to categorize my input list into. And then in my output data set, I can actually see that there are still some that weren't matched. But if we scroll down, for example, is able to say, okay, groceries, maybe that's in kitchenware. Musical instruments, maybe that's in home appliances, because those sound similar. And that jewelry and footwear probably belong to fashion. It is the most similar category. You might notice that as I'm scrolling through here, an LLM isn't always consistent. So over here, we can see musical instruments. I know this is spelled wrong, but it didn't it didn't assign that to kitchenware like it did, or sorry, home appliances like it did down here. And same thing here, I guess those two are misspelled, right? But this is something that's important with LLMs that you kind of want to be careful about, is that maybe they're like, not maybe, that every single time it actually makes a prediction, it's going to be making it's not kind of pulling from a knowledge bank of information. It's deciding on what's the best answer based off of what it knows, or what it knows as to be true at that point. So there are ways to improve and iterate on an LLM. Dataiku provides a few ways of doing that. So for example, we can put in, hey, maybe musical instruments should belong to home appliances. We can provide a few examples for the LLM so that it knows how you might want to categorize things. Cool. So this is another way you can use LLMs to do data cleaning. So creating categories and standardizing on categories. Another one that I really like and find interesting is being able to use LLMs for entity extraction. So with Dataiku, we can use regex to do some of this text extraction. So if it's an address that's pretty clean, you're able to highlight, extract text like, and, continue to highlight until you're able to pull out, what you want and extract it into a column. But what if your address is pretty messy? And so over here, we have some pretty messy addresses. How do we extract these entities? It ends up being very difficult. So let's say I wanted to kind of pull out a zip code. I can try the same method, but if there really is no pattern or rhyme or reason to where this is in my text, it's pretty difficult. So an LLM is actually quite good at entity extraction, and we can leverage our prompt recipe to do this. So, so we can see over here, we can actually put in a prompt in this prompt studio, input the address that we want to be able to pull out these entities from. We can run it on a sample of records using this particular LLM, and we can see those results. You can also see a cost estimate. So all this information can help us decide which LLM, what prompt will provide the best results at the cheapest cost. So we can kind of iterate. This is using GPT-4. You can see it's a little bit more expensive. What the result is of this is some really nicely formatted addresses. The LLM was able to pick up on this really, really well. And again, this has to do with the LLM being really good at understanding context and being able to identify, each of these different entities within a very messy text. So another really great way to be able to do data prep and use Gen AI to actually do some of this data prep better than you might with traditional NLP techniques. Cool. So we talked through how you might do data prep differently with Gen AI, and also use some of the Gen AI tools within Dataiku to speed up your data prep. But once you've built your data prep pipeline, you probably don't want to have to redo it again unless you absolutely have to. So how can you use Dataiku to do some of that, automation? So this is a different project, but really on every project that you build in Dataiku, you have the ability to create these different scenarios. So scenarios allow you to, I'm going to create this kind of test example here. It allows you to create triggers. So say I want to rerun a project flow every week or every hour. I can indicate that here. I can also get a little bit fancy and say, hey, I want to actually trigger this on a SQL query change or a Python script. So I can actually put a custom SQL script in here, and it'll run in a given cadence. And every time the output of that query changes, that whole pipeline will run. The steps actually indicate what exactly do you want to happen. Do I want to build a data set? Maybe I want to build certain charts and update a dashboard. So I can add those steps over here in a point and click way. So this is where I might add a data set I want to build. And then finally, I can add a reporter. So the reporter will allow me to send an email, send a message, a Slack, Teams message to the people who maybe if it's not successful, this job fails. Maybe I'm going to email my own team members, my engineers to come in and figure out what went wrong. I might also be able to add an attachment with a log or a data set to help with that debugging. Alternatively, I can also say, hey, if it is successful, go ahead and send this to my key stakeholders. And I can even add a data set, maybe a data set export that would be relevant to them, or a link to a dashboard. So you really, the kind of world is your oyster with this sort of thing in terms of how you might customize it. And over here, this is an example of, this is one that's specific for modeling, but it's triggered every week. It's saying, hey, I'm going to send an email if it is successful, and I have a whole bunch of different steps. One thing that you might notice is while you're kind of adding these different steps into a scenario, you're probably going to want to be alerted if something doesn't look right. And oftentimes that has to do with data quality checks. You want to make sure that the quality of your data that's going into your dashboard or going into your model is what you are expecting. And so within these steps, you're actually able to verify these different data quality rules before moving on to the next step. And so an example of that over here that I want to show you is in this data quality tab. So this is going to exist on any data set. You can create data quality rules that allow you to check. So let's say over here, this one is looking at column count. So it's ensuring that there are at least 13 columns. So you can run this test, and this looks like this is a soft minimum. So it's giving you a warning. Alternatively, I can make this a hard minimum. And it looks like there are 12. So that's going to error out. You can create a whole bunch of new rules here in a point and click way. So it's incredibly easy to create these different data quality checks. And then you have this dashboard automatically built for you to allow you to look at these data quality rules at a data set level, but then you can also come up here and look at them at a project level. So all of these things, the quality checks and the scenarios work hand in hand to allow you to create automatic scheduled jobs. This way, once you build your data pipeline, your data cleaning pipeline once, you don't have to rebuild it again. You can have it just run on its own. And so with that, we're just going to come back quickly and say the key takeaways are, and I'm hoping that you guys got something out of this, but that you can leverage GenAI as another tool in your toolkit with Dataiku. Dataiku really does make it very easy to access these different tools. And if you want to learn more about how we safely and securely connect to large language models and allow you to use them in a governable way, definitely check out some of the other product days sessions that my colleagues have run. There's a lot to learn here, and it's super exciting to be able to use Dataiku to leverage them in projects. And finally, that you're able to rerun these projects automatically using our different scheduling tools. Thank you very much.